My big thing with spy movies, just at the beginning of my little presentation, for lack of a better word, is that I always thought I hated spy movies. I'm like most of them I find boring at best. So like I just and when I began my week, I began with the one James Bond movie I've seen, which is Casino Royale.
Your file shows no kills, Bond. But to become a double O, it takes two.
How did he die?
Your contact? Not well.
You needn't worry. The second is...
Yes. Considerably.
The man was Le Chiffre, private banker to the world's terrorists.
That's not true. I've seen three of them. I've seen this, Quantum of Solace, and I believe Skyfall. And like these movies, I always found them to be agonizingly boring. And like this was no exception. This was like agonizingly boring. I will say it contains like thus far my favorite Bond song, which is You Know My Name, which is by Chris Cornell, which is just really, really good.
Would you be seen with me by the merciless eyes I've deceived? I've seen angels fall from blinding heights, but you yourself are nothing so divine. Just next in line on yourself because no one else here will save you.
Like I think it's better than Skyfall. I don't care for Skyfall all that much. And Golden, we'll get to Goldeneye, but Goldeneye's song was awful. And Jordan, you've seen Casino Royale, right?
Not in a long time. I watched it back in high school.
Yeah,
with
see, that's the reason why I remember having watched it. I'm like, I just remember not liking this movie. It's just not doing anything for me.
I remember at the time being like they're okay. They're a little dry.
Right? Like, I'm like, okay, these action sequences are all right. They're kind of bland. Like, I've seen these before. And I discovered, like, again, not to jump ahead, but just in general, I watched two Bond movies with two different Bonds. And the most uninteresting parts of this are the romantic parts. Like, when he's seducing a woman, it's so fucking boring. And, like, the number one thing I know about James Bond is he's supposed to be charismatic. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like Daniel Craig in this role has like no charisma. Like he's so boring. Like
but I found that to be
he's
true.
Not like a handsome guy. It's just like the way he's being presented is just not very interesting to me.
I found that to be true of 007 and Doctor No as well. So I think that's true. I just think that's the character.
No, because we'll talk about Goldeneye. I really like Pierce Brosnan. So we're gonna when we talk about Goldeneye, we'll double back to this idea that I need to investigate further because it made me go. I'm like, oh, is Daniel Craig the problem? Because like there's just nothing in this that was grabbing my attention quite in the same way as Goldeneye did, and like
see. What's funny is I remember, so what I remember about and it's not much because it was so long ago, but what I remember about the Daniel Craig one is I remember like he has a dry wit and it's like you either really liked it or you didn't, and part of what made it like it was fun at the time, and I think that had to do everything to do with who I was watching it with, and you could like the friend that I was watching with, their energy it then translates to me because like I remember having fun with it at the time, but
yeah,
this one, Doctor No, it did not pass the phone test.
My thing with it was like it was trying to be realistic and that made it dull. I will say that it does the bit where he gets smacked in the balls is funny.
I've got a little itch. Down there. Would you mind?
To the right! To the right! To the right! You are a funny man, Mr. Bond. Ah! Yeah! Ah! Ah! Oh,
That bit's funny. I was engaged there, but for the most part, I was just like, yeah, this just really isn't. And like I say, it has my favorite Bond song. I genuinely like the song, but otherwise, I was like, this is just really. But yeah, the number one question we're gonna cycle back to is I'm like, is Daniel Craig the problem? It feels like he might be the problem, but I don't know. We'll dive into it as we get into the other James Bonds. Jordan, what is your next one?
Into my final have not seen, which, I figured we'd end on the most
Yeah,
famous spy of all
We
time.
had a similar thought. Feels like a
Because
nice
if you're
bookend.
doing if you're doing spy stuff, it feels like you have to do 007. So
You have to do James Bond.
I did Doctor No.
My name is Bond, James Bond. My instructions were implicit. I was to leave for Jamaica in 2 hours. License to kill.
Now you maybe miss it.
You don't miss a thing.
I decided to accept your invitation,
I have to leave immediately.
just as things were getting interesting again.
So what's funny is I did it. Doctor No is the very first James Bond film, but it is not the first of the books. It is actually the 6th book.
It also is technically not the first James Bond thing.
And so, what's funny is, from what I can tell anyway, the first book is actually Casino Royale.
It is, yeah.
So while I technically did the first movie, you did the first book.
Yeah, the very first James Bond adaptation is apparently an episode of a random TV show, which name I don't remember, that is based on Casino Royale. And there is another Casino Royale movie in like the 70s or 80s that is also an adaptation of the same book.
But so, and this is where I feel like this isn't a controversial opinion, but from what I'm reading, where was it?
What did Archer have to say about? Wait, did Archer have a review of Doctor No in his list?
Oh, it was the first one on there. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what he had to say.
I'm curious.
We'll have to play you. Future Justin, cut it in here.
Yeah, we'll cut it in here. We'll cut in what Archer had to say about Doctor No. Wait, did he have something to say about GoldenEye as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll slug that in, and we'll slide that in when we get to GoldenEye.
So what this movie is about really doesn't matter because
there's an evil organization. They want to blow up the world. These movies are all the fucking same.
Well, not even just that, but the reason why what this movie is about doesn't really matter is because James Bond has become so synonymous with spy movies that any description I could describe like half of the movies that I watched this week, and they're a James Bond movie.
I'm sure there's probably an evil guy. The bad guy's name is Doctor No. He's got an evil missile that he wants to shoot for reasons.
He wants to do a thing where he's doing a thing so he can do a thing.
Right.
And James Bond has to stop.
There's a love interest. They're not very interesting.
And so I didn't much care for this film, quite frankly. I thought it was boring because
fair enough.
For me, when you're doing like James Bond is to me synonymous at this point with comedy. It's a comedy thing. You do a thing like this to make fun of a thing like this,
right? Yeah, right. I understand so, that you can't have the thing that makes fun of this without having this, but this just isn't doing it for me.
This doesn't do it for me because I'm waiting for the joke, and there is no joke because it's supposed to be taken seriously.
Okay, but that's my question about because truthfully, when we get to GoldenEye, I would like to come back to James Bond because is it silly?
I think it's silly.
Is it like lots of gadgets and goofs and gags, or is it more like Like
Oh,
trying to
no,
be
no.
the 1960s equivalent to the Daniel Craig movies.
Well, in this one, there's not really. It wasn't big on technology
Interesting.
so much. It was because, like, for example, I'm trying to find an example of stuff they use. Um, Dent travels to Crab Key and is given a tarantula to kill Bond. Not like a fancy poison dart thing or anything, like
Right.
literally a spider, right? Or at a certain point, the assassins try to run Bond off the road, but themselves crash and die. Like they don't like put down caltrops or have like a spy car. Like no, they literally just try to run him off the road. So it's like this one is really it's and this is part of why I found it boring. It's too realistic.
Yeah,
It's
fair.
not
That's interesting.
like
That's an
I
interesting
find
sentiment.
I find Bond movies and spy movies fun when they're over the top because
That's
to me
very
we talked about this a little bit off stream, but for me when it comes to spy stuff there's a cognitive dissonance of like I'm aware that spies to some to some extent do exist. And I'm fully aware
They
that
don't do
nine
this,
times out
though.
of 10 they don't do this. They're going to be in boardrooms. They're
Right.
going to be doing like it's very boring stuff. So I have a cognitive dissonance of like I have a hard time believing this, like putting myself into this world.
It's a lot more
And
like
so that's
Jason
where
Bourne and a little less car chases and martinis.
yeah, and
suits
so that's where like I view spies almost like a superhero,
yeah.
which I think is why I enjoy like the Black Widow or even the Kingsman, where it's like they're not realistic.
That's
They're not
why.
they're
That's
not realistic,
that's
and
why the
that's why it's
Craig
fun.
ones were it was so boring to me. Where I was like, yeah, this is all right, but I've seen better versions of this that are more interesting,
Like
that are more dynamic,
like
that are more.
I guess ultimately
For me, this is me, for me personally.
yeah, ultimately for me, like it comes down to because I inherently from the onset don't find the idea super believable. At that point, I can't engage with this when it's trying to be serious, and so it has to be so over the top that I'm like, well, yeah, it's not serious. It's not trying to be serious.
So so okay. Well, what about? So do you remember Craig as Bond? How would you compare? Could you compare him to Connery as Bond?
Not real, a little bit, not enough that I'd feel comfortable enough to fully give an opinion. I just remember him being very like
Serious.
serious, like I'm ooh,
Yeah.
and like yeah, again, like the thing that's being made fun of.
Right. And like, is Sean Connery charming in any way?
I guess I don't know. I mean, in the 1960s way.
Yeah, fair enough. Where he's negging the poor woman and he's talking to her like shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a little bit.
That's so
Like
interesting. That's very
it's not.
interesting.
It's not. I didn't feel like it was overly sexist, but again, it's the 1960s, so
Fair enough. Yeah, I like I said, I would like to come back to James Bond for reasons I'm going to get into. Are you good with Doctor No?
oh, I mean, yeah, ultimately my summation, my feelings are just that um it was kind of boring for me.
We'll, we'll,
Also, apparently
we'll bounce back
uh
into it as we go through, just because I have comparisons I'd like to make because I have an opinion
also
on Goldeneye that may surprise you.
where is it? Um there it is. It had a budget of 1.1 million and it made 59.5
I
million.
mean, yeah, it's a James Bond movie. They always do well.
And so while the film
He was a popular
did
character.
it was a financial success, uh it received a mixed critical reaction upon release. But it has gained a reputation over time as one of the series' best
Yeah,
installments.
no one's favorite James Bond movie is Doctor No. Yeah, James Bond mostly he exists in like the 70s and 80s. Like when you look at there was a really good chart I saw of all the James Bond movies, and like from like 1990 to like the newer ones, they're way more spaced out. Whereas in the 70s and 80s, there's a bunch more of them. It's really quite funny. Jordan, is that it for Doctor No?
Yeah, it was a movie.
It sure was a movie. So with that, I find your opinions on Doctor No interesting, because my question when I was going back, I wanted to pick a decently aged James Bond movie. Because yeah, as discussed, I don't like the Daniel Craig one. And when I was watching GoldenEye, there is a period where I asked myself, I'm like, is it Daniel Craig?
When the world is the target
72 hours ago, a secret weapon system was detonated over Severnaya.
and the threat is real,
GoldenEye exists. A radiation surge that destroys everything with an electronic circuit.
you can still depend on one man.
I want you to find GoldenEye.
3,
Find who took it
2,
and stop it.
1.
Because I really liked GoldenEye. I was surprised how much I like GoldenEye. It was so much fun. Pierce Brosnan is like effortlessly charming. He's so charming in a way that like I get why women like him. I will say that like the sequences where he's romantic still suck and they're still the most boring part of the movie, but the action sequences are so over the top. Like there's this exceptionally funny car chase where James Bond is chasing after the bad guys and James Bond is just in a tank. He's just in a tank, just tearing through the city, and he keeps doing these really funny scenes of James Bond very seriously driving this tank. And it's really funny, and it's really fun. And like all of Sean Bean is in it. He's got like this facial deformity as the bad guy. The big twist is that he's 006, and you think that James Bond got him killed, but it turns out that he's alive. And this movie is during the Cold War, or it's like just post Cold War. So the whole bit is the big twist is he's part of a group of Russians who trusted the British government, but the British government screwed them over, and so he's looking for revenge. And there's the one James Bond villain in it who she fuck it, I'm just gonna say it, she gets off on pain.
Got it.
Yeah, she straight up just gets off on killing people. Like she'll like shoot someone and then she'll.
Oh, not her own pain. She's not a masochist.
I think that is a version of masochism, but she gets off on other people's pain.
No,
Sadomasochist. She's a sadomasochist.
Yeah, I was gonna say I believe getting off on others is sadomasochist.
Yeah, she's a sadomasochist, and her big thing is she kills people by crushing them with her thighs. So she like kills like multiple people by just anaconda-ing them with her thighs. Like this one guy she's having sex with, and she kills him with her thighs.
I mean, if you gotta go,
you gotta go. I mean, that's certainly a way to go. But like, she's so weird and apparently, and because everyone, if you know GoldenEye, you know there's the N64 game.
Of course.
Apparently, in the game, they've just completely changed her character to not be a sadomasochist who sexually gets off on people's pain. When I was watching this, I was like, I'm really digging this, and this is really fun for the exact reasons you said, where it's so over the top, it almost feels like a parody of James Bond in a James Bond movie. Like that's how over the top this feels, and it's absolutely working for me because it's so goofy. So that's why I'm like, well, maybe if I went to the 1970s, and that's why I'm not done with this franchise. I want to go back to it and examine and like investigate more and find out, man, maybe if we hit, maybe I'll like one of the Sean Connery ones, or maybe,
I mean, yeah, who knows? Maybe by the second or third Sean Connery one, maybe it gets a little bit more fun, but maybe the technology for filming becomes a little bit more able.
Is the Timothy Dalton or the Roger Moore ones? Are they silly and fun? Like it's the 1980s. I can believe it. Like I want to. And also there's just spy shit we didn't hit. There's more spy shit. I'd like to come back to spies. But yeah, I was surprised by how much I like GoldenEye.
There's still more Johnny English movies.
There's still more Johnny English movies. Yeah. So that's it for our spy shit. Hey everybody, it's Endcard Justin here again. Let me know down in the comments, is it just us? It's probably us. We're probably the problem. But let us know, what is your favorite James Bond movie, if indeed you are a fan of James Bond. Recommend a James Bond movie to us. Recommend which one's your favorite. When we come back to this topic another time, we may look at them. However, in the meantime, if you want to see the full episode that this video is from, where we talk about all kinds of spy stuff, including the Jason Bourne Spy with Melissa McCarthy and all other kinds of spy-related movies, you can click the video on the left. That'll take you right there. Otherwise, you can click the video on the right, and that'll take you to a random video that YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy. Either way, you can hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave us a like if you could, and we'll see you all in the next video.